I don't know.
That was like back in the spring, right?
Yeah, back in earlier this year. Yeah, early spring.
Yeah. So I went to this Progtide meetup in Structure, and I just want to talk about just for the students here, like the power of just networking. So Dylan was speaking there, and he was like super awesome. He was just speaking with people right before the event and after the event, and that's where we met. And ever since then, he's been super helpful. We just been he's been willing to like answer questions and stuff. And then Cam and I, since we started our podcast, I really don't feel like this is working. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. Thank you. Ever since when we started our podcast, Dylan was gracious enough to just let us two college guys come into his home and record an interview with him. But he gave some really good insights on what it takes to get into the industry. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking about practice. And but first, Dylan, can you just kind of give like a quick like rundown of like your background and stuff?
Yeah. I I was actually just reading something last night, and it was like you have to share an embarrassing story when you start speaking, so that people want to relate to you and then listen to you. I don't have embarrassing stories I like to share; those are embarrassing. So I'm gonna try and alleviate the embarrassment. But no, I appreciate you guys coming out. This is not something you have to do. Just your willingness to show up is no, it's pretty cool, especially for me, which sometimes I feel uncomfortable with. I don't often feel like people need to hear what I say. I don't feel like I've got very much insight to share, just experiences. And I was thinking about as I was driving down here, I was going, okay, well, where did all this start? Somewhere along the lines, I have to give an introduction. And unfortunately, I have to say it started like 9 years ago now, because it feels like it was just yesterday, but I started in this career 9 years ago. And it's crazy how it's kind of evolved. 9 years ago when I started, UX wasn't a thing. It was just kind of a term that has evolved in and of itself over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. But when I was doing what we deem UX 9 years ago, it was just still under the umbrella of graphic design. And I wasn't even a graphic designer at the time. I actually came out of a business marketing degree, and I was working at a startup doing internet marketing. And at this agency, we were offering a lot of different SEO, pay-per-click advertising services. If any of you guys know anything about those type of advertising services, there are sometimes design needs that go along with that. And just because we were short-staffed at a startup, you tend to wear multiple hats. And I always had an interest in design, and so I started doing their banner ads, and we started doing landing page design. And then it kind of blew up into, now we're doing full-blown landing page design and full-on website design. And sometimes our clients would come to us with, these internet marketing needs, and their brands would struggle in such significant ways that we'd offer to do full-on rebrands for them. So that was kind of where I started to get my feet wet in design. And coming from a marketing background, I was actually kind of very put off by people who were coming out of the art degrees, because I was going, their life is so cush. I mean, you can just throw paint up on an artboard and they're right, but that's not how it works in internet marketing. There's right answers and there's wrong answers, and there's more often than not more right answers and less right answers. And so I was taking my marketing background and I was applying it to design in a way that we've now ended up calling it kind of a user experience design. I was using data to analyze the best experience for users. I was using A/B testing practices. I was interviewing users and creating personas and doing all these things that I just kind of was discovering on my own as kind of outcomes from my marketing background. Now, I went back to school after that startup, and I got more officially schooled up in design. And after I left school again, I went and started working for a company called Elevati. Elevati owns adoption.com, adoption.org, and about a dozen other adoption-based websites. There I managed a creative team and a social media team. And we set off and rebranded, which was at that point in time a 4 million page website. And the rebrand process for adoption.com was a huge lift, and we launched, 6, 7, 8 different product features in that time. That was up in Idaho. Unfortunately, my wife, she's from Utah. The pull brought us back down here to Utah, and I wasn't looking forward to it at that point in time, but it's actually been pretty great. We came back down, and I started at another startup called Plus 11 that no longer exists, because if you guys know anything about startups, that sometimes happens. But at that startup where I was there for almost 3 years, we launched somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 different apps. And I really got to, put both feet in into the app design world and the mobile design world. We were doing apps for iOS and Android and iPads. And that's really where I started to get this foundation of mobile UX. And that's kind of where I have spent my time growing in expertise, if you will. By no means an expert, but I guess that's the term you have to give it. For the last 2 years, I've been up the road at Domo, and I lead their mobile UX team. So that's, I think, the short of it.
That was the briefest introduction to your career I've ever heard, and I've heard it a few times. So
I'm getting better at it then.
Yeah, so you're refining it. Yeah, iterating.
Yep.
So that's innovating on his pitch for what your story is, and I think a big thing that really drew me to getting you to know you more is just the fact that you might think that okay, I'm not an expert. I don't know if people want to hear what I have to say, but you have a really good content marketing practice. So he has his own show called Design Daily.
Design Today.
Design Today? It's not Design Daily?
No.
Obviously, I didn't do my research before this, even though I watched his
I might need to
episodes.
rebrand it after this, though. Design Daily.
User testing. I really like that one better. But, yeah, this is a problem with a student show. I have, no time for research. We'll cut that out in post. I'm just talking to myself in the editing booth right now. But it's just the idea that you even though you don't think you're an expert, you at least have something to say. And I think that's a pretty big factor in really getting into the industry. What made you decide to start marketing yourself, have your own little production company?
I think you're overselling it a little bit. My production company consists of me, an iPad, an iPhone, a couple cameras, and some cheap mics. But I always loved talking design. I love talking kind of the whole process. And so I just thought, I didn't mention, but I've freelance designed for the last 6-7 years. And I've met such cool people. I've networked with really cool entrepreneurs. I've networked with maybe C-list celebrities. I don't even know if he can be considered C-list. Anyone know who Nick Cannon is?
Yeah. Dude, he's like straight B-list.
You're
back in the 90s. I knew who he was when I was a little kid.
Fortunately, I know he's not listening to my podcast, but we got to work with him for a long time and got to do some fun stuff with him and a couple apps for him. Working on some stuff right now for the Utah Jazz. Just had some opportunities to work with some really cool people. And throughout this whole process, I go, man, I'm learning so much and meeting with these people and gaining insights from these people. I just wish I was documenting it. And that's kind of where it started. I said, well, here we go. I'm going to start this little podcast, bring people in for interviews, try and document and share. So that's kind of where the whole thing started from. And I also looked at it not necessarily as, can I get a podcast off the ground and have it be super successful? I did it very selfishly because I knew next time I wanted to go get another job that recruiters, managers, whoever it may be, they're going to go do their homework and they're going to go look and see, okay, who's this Dylan Winsper guy? What does he do? What does he stand for? And I thought, you know what, if I can start documenting some of my own original thoughts, some of the things that I've gone through, whether it's in the form of blogging, which I'm terrible at writing, so that's why I didn't choose to go that route, or the podcast. I thought it's just a way for me to create some content, make myself more marketable. And that was really the short of it. It wasn't for speaking opportunities. It wasn't for, the followers or anything like that. It was just purely in the sense of I want to continue to progress my career, and I know that creating my own content is going to help.
So it's something kind of interesting with starting this podcast with Caden, and the reason we just called it Pivot is because, like Dylan has explained in his story, is we're constantly making these pivots, right, and changing our career. I come from linguistics background and literature. Caden has more marketing stuff that it comes to as well, and so we're always making these pivots, and then when we get into the career, we pivot into promotions, we change gears, go different routes. And so I think as we've been doing these podcasts, it's been really interesting seeing people's different backgrounds and where they're coming from. And I imagine everyone here, is coming from some different place, but we're all kind of here trying to push in that same direction, right? Something that I really think that's cool about Dylan, he's a super humble dude. When we went and interviewed him last time, we asked him some questions about what it takes to get into the industry, And one of the things that stood out to me that he said was being humble. And so I think maybe it's a good segue to let's kind of be humble. If you guys have some questions, let's bring it to the table and ask Dylan, see if he can give us some advice. Even though he might not admit it, he really is a knowledgeable and humble dude. So,
you guys are in marketing. I mean, you are overselling this a lot.
Yeah, so we'd like to open it up to you guys. We're just going to do a Q&A. So if you have any question, you can direct it mostly to Dylan. If you want to ask us too, that's cool. But let's hear what Dylan has to say.
Yeah, he drove all the way down here, so you better drill him.
No, I mean, if it's all right, I kind of want to preface this with you guys who are here. It already says a ton about you, right? I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, you mentioned there's a handful of people that liked the LinkedIn post. I'm going to assume that all those people who liked my LinkedIn post knew about the event. They're not here. Some of them are, but not all of them. I don't know how big the UVU UX club is or how many people saw whatever advertising you guys did, but they're not all here. The fact that you guys are here already says a lot about you and how you're preparing and how you're trying to get your foot in the door at your next UX job. It says a lot about you guys. So again, I appreciate it. Use this opportunity to figure out what the next step is for yourself. I don't know how else to say this, but be selfish in your questions. I take zero offense to it. Be selfish. Figure out what you need to understand in order to make this work for you.
Okay, so.
And if you could stand up and say your name before you ask your question, yeah.
Yeah, let me just.
I'm JJ, Jenny. Hi, everyone. So I have a friend who just graduated this last spring, and I would consider him to be I would say he's definitely above average in the design area, especially the graphics design, user interface design. And I saw him about a week ago here, and I said, how's it going? Did you get a UX job? And how's that been? How was that search going? Assuming he already got one because he's really good. And he's like, no, I'm still at my graphic design gig. And I was like, oh really? He's like, yeah. He's like, every job I apply for that's UX entry level, they always deny me because they say I don't have enough experience, and they say you need 3 to 5 years of experience, but they're entry level. And so when he told me that, I was like, and I was like, how many have you applied for? He's like, oh, I've probably had about 15 interviews. So I was just like, I just wanted to know, when it comes to entry level jobs, UX jobs in Utah locally, are there any key things we should have down, that you
Sure.
looking for?
Sure. So let me rephrase your question. You're asking, how screwed am I, right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, what do I have to do?
So it's super interesting, and this is the perfect setup question. I love talking about this topic right here. UVU is one of the few schools in Utah that has a UX program. I mean, maybe you guys know that. That's why you're here, right? BYU doesn't have a UX program. They got something they're trying to put together. It's not there yet. SUU doesn't have anything. University of Utah doesn't have anything. Where else have I looked? A handful of other places. I mean, they just don't have a UX program yet. In fact, I'm an alumni of BYU Idaho, and I'm trying to work with BYU Idaho to put together a UX program. They're slow, so I'm actually in the process of starting a little curriculum of my own that I'll be fleshing out over the next couple months to hit on a couple topics that I feel aren't taught in a UX program that I think we can address right now. So just look at some of the facts here real quick, and this isn't to freak you out, it's just the facts. How many of you guys are graduating the next semester or two? Raise your hands. Okay, and keep your hands up. How many of you have already secured a job? Okay, so about everyone's hand just went down. Okay, so you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to secure that first job? I just had the fun opportunity of hiring 2 design interns over the summer at Domo. And when I posted this internship opening, or these 2 internship openings that I had just kind of a flood of resumes come in. We started with 30 some design candidates, and it was a crazy experience for me, because as I started to get all these resumes of people who are interested in our UX internship, what I did not expect was, as I was looking at these resumes, is everyone looked identical on paper. And I'm just going, well, crap, how do I figure out who to hire at this point? You know, obviously then I pull up their portfolios and I start looking at the work, and I'm being a little bit liberal here, but everyone's portfolios looked identical. You know, you've done different projects, yes, but on paper, here's what I'm saying. You've done your schooling, you've done a handful of projects in school that you've now put it in your portfolio, and maybe you've done a project for a family member. And at that point, like, everyone looks identical. So I was really going like, crap. There's a lot of pressure on me, because I really had to fight for those 2 design internship positions at Domo. And so there was a lot of eyes on me going, how badly is Dylan going to screw this up? And I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I make the best decision? So I did something that I wasn't anticipating on doing, but I used a software kind of like HireVue. Have you guys ever used HireVue? It's where you kind of do like a 3-question interview, if you will, via kind of like a recording. And I used this as an opportunity, not because I cared about what people's answers were to the questions, but because I wanted to see personality. I wanted to see who these people were, how they answered their questions. What they said in their answers didn't really matter to me, because again, everyone's answers were pretty much identical as well. But how they went about answering them actually spoke volumes about personality. So I was able to take those 30 candidates who are interested. I kind of whittled it down to, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12. And then I conducted phone interviews. Again, the phone interviews weren't to see how well they could answer the questions, but now I was really trying to dig into personality. Are they going to be a good fit at our company? And are they going to be a good fit with me? Is this going to be somebody who I think is going to work well with me? And that's completely subjective, because you're going to have a lot of hiring managers out there who are nothing like me. From there, we whittled it down to 3 or 4 candidates that we brought into internal interviews. And by that point, when these 3 or 4 candidates came in, I knew all of them pretty well. But I wanted to see how they were going to respond to a couple new people in the room, and how are they going to respond to a kind of a group setting where they had more questions to answer. And it was really revealing. Again, this wasn't something I was anticipating doing, but trying to discern personality was a very difficult piece to the process. Now, if I can hit on one more thing, because I haven't really given you a good answer yet. The next piece to all of this, your portfolio, I think, needs to be up to date. Your resume needs to be up to date, but that's a bare minimum. And that's not going to get your foot in the door unless you've already networked with somebody in the company who's actually getting you in there. And to that point, I can't oversell that one enough. As I was going back and thinking, how did I get into my internet marketing job? How did I get into adoption.com? How did I get into Plus 11? How did I get into Domo? All 4 of those came through people I knew. I can't overplay that enough. Networking, I hate even using that word because it's overused. But real connections, and I'm not talking the LinkedIn connections of like 1,000, right? Because you do not have 1,000 LinkedIn connections. I guarantee it. You have 1,000 people who you've hit connect with, and that's about it. Did anyone read the LinkedIn book that their CEO wrote? Did you ever wonder why they put 500 plus and they never counted that number up any further? It's because he never anticipated anyone to get to 500. He didn't want anyone to get to 500. This isn't Facebook. You don't have 1,500 friends. He anticipated that you would have 100 or less. Because how do you maintain a friendship with people if you have 1,500 of them? You can't. So again, I'm going to put forth this idea that as you start to network, how do you make these real networking experiences? As you start to seek out these mentors, how do you make yourself available, valuable to those mentors so that when something comes around, that mentor goes, well, he's not just a pain in my side. He's actually someone who's a budding designer who I think could handle this opportunity. So I think in that networking sphere, I can't oversell it enough. That piece is huge. But then we get to this other piece, and this is something that, again, I had another experience of talking to a couple designers at Domo today. They were talking about portfolios and about how everyone was needing to update their portfolios, and without a good portfolio, you can't get your foot in the door. And I said, I agree, but I don't think people who've got an updated portfolio are an automatic shoo-in. Because to your point about your friend who graduated a while ago and hasn't found a job, I connected with a handful of designers when I spoke at BYU Idaho last year, connected with a handful of new designers when I spoke at Product Hive a little while ago. I connected with a lot of them, and I would say 90% of them are in the exact same boat as your friend. UVU's pumping out UX design students, but you know who's pumping out more? Dev Mountain. Dev Mountain is pumping out design students every 13 weeks or something like that. And their classes are 15 to 20 people. Here's the hard facts. 15 to 20 job openings for UX design is not popping up every 13 weeks. So you got a huge supply and demand issue. So it's not enough just to be at the baseline of I've got my portfolio and my resume up to date. What else can you do? Or even if you get the opportunity to submit your resume and you're going to try and stand out in the stack of resumes, what else can you do? I put forth this idea that I don't think it's as much of what you're doing in your resume or in your portfolio right now in Utah County in this job market, because there's a lot of people who look identically to you. I'm going to put forth this idea that it's not about the hard skills that you have, about I can work in Sketch and Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects and Premiere. I know InVision and Marvel and Framer and yada, yada, yada. What was that?
Adobe XD.
If you're using that, you're automatically out of whatever I'm interviewing for. What's that?
Take the hint.
I'm just playing. I just was very upset with XD. That's a personal issue I have. I don't even want to go into that. I'm going to put forward this idea that if you even lack those hard skills, I am so cool with that as somebody looking to interview somebody, because I can train hard skills on the job. What I can't train are the soft skills. I can't train your ability to collaborate with other people. I can't train your ability to articulate your thoughts or articulate your ideas. I can't train your ability to stay on top of projects or hear other people's opinions, or a word that I use a ton because it's super crucial. I can't help you learn empathy. And so all these different soft skills, they're what make, in my opinion, a candidate stand out. Let me share another story. Hopefully this will actually stir a couple other questions. when I was doing that interview process, and I had those 30 candidates, I interviewed 2 of them at the same time. And when I told my brother that, he was like, "You're kind of a tool." I was like, "Yeah, it kind of was a douche move," but I wasn't doing it to be that. I did it because these 2 guys were friends. I was meeting them out a place outside of Domo, so it was really just the most convenient thing to do. And because they were friends, I thought, they'd be cool with it. We got done with the interview, and they did what they were supposed to do. They both emailed me afterwards. They expressed their appreciation. But let me tell you the difference between these 2 designers. The first one emailed me, and first off, let me say, I'm not knocking this dude at all. He was a great dude, great resume, great portfolio. All that was kosher. When he emailed me and said, "Hey, Dylan, I appreciate your time. You answered all my questions. I appreciate, taking your time out of your day to come do this stuff." Yada, yada. He did everything you're supposed to do in a follow-up email. Cool. The second guy, I got his email around the same time. And in his email, he said, "Thanks for your time. I appreciate you doing what you're doing. I appreciate you answering our questions." And then he said this. He goes, "I understand that you've got a tough decision. You've got a lot of candidates that you're looking at, and interviewing me and my friend today, I just want to say you couldn't make a wrong decision with either of us. This friend of mine is a great designer. I've worked with him in the past. He really knows how to work with people. He's really great at collaborating. He really knows his stuff. He's an excellent UI and just sold his buddy." And he says, "I'm not saying that because I don't want the job. I do think I could be a benefit to your team, but I recognize how hard your decision is, and I thank you for it." That spoke volumes for this kid's personality. He's competing for a job position and just sold his other dude for the position. I don't think it's hard to recognize which dude you want on your team. I don't want, if I'm given the opportunity to look at either of those 2, I want the guy who's humble, who's teachable, who's willing to put his ego aside, his pride aside, and build somebody else up. Hopefully that story shares some light.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question?
Yeah. Networking, it's about soft skills are huge because you can't train us on those. We have them or we don't. We have to work on those ourselves, and those are things you look for in a entry level.
Yeah.
That answers it. Yeah.
Let me share something else here too. This is funny watching you whip back and forth. Let me share something else too. When I was having this conversation with the designers earlier today at Domo, they said students are in a really tough position when they're asked to collaborate. Because you've got people who are willing to put in the work, and then you've got the other people who are just kind of willing to go through the motions. And as students, you don't benefit from collaborating well. You benefit from what do you really get out of it? You want to have a good portfolio piece. And so you're kind of enticed to, okay, this dude's super difficult, but how can I work through his difficulty and just satisfy what I need at the end? It's unfortunate, I get it, but at the same time, you're not being graded on your ability to collaborate, but that's an opportunity to learn how to collaborate. And if you're approaching graduation this semester or next semester, and you haven't learned some of these soft skills, you've kind of already lost. Or you kick it into overdrive because you've got opportunity to learn and to grow as it comes to those soft skills. If you still got a couple years ahead of you, I can't oversell the ability to work with that difficult partner, help understand what he's going through, what he sees, in order to better collaborate in this project. You're not going to see that affect your end grade, but I guarantee you're going to see it affect your soft skills, and you're going to see it affect your placement. Thanks, JJ.
Thank you.
Oh, you're fine.
Let's do this.
Hello, everyone. My name's Sean. Originally, my question was going to be, as junior designers, what can we do on our resumes or portfolios to stand out? And apparently, that's not possible, really, because they all kind of blend together. So, on the flip side, what are some sort of pitfalls that we, should avoid, or things that you look at on a resume or portfolio and you throw that person in the trash when you see that one thing, or
Sure.
what it may be?
Sure.
I was just wondering if you had any ideas on that.
Yeah. And I do think you can still screw up a resume. I do think you can screw up your portfolio still. One thing that I have seen is that people try to oversell themselves on their resume, and they just put way too much on their resume. Again, maybe this is just me, and so you have to take it for a grain of salt. But I appreciate the dude who's got, a couple of these highlights of their experience, but then there's somewhere in there is like some raw, authentic personality, something in there that just makes me get an idea for what this person really is. I've actually got my face on my resume. I've got my picture on my resume because my face sells. No, I'm just kidding. I put my face on my resume because I want somebody not only just to read my name, but to be able to put a name and a face together. I think that's important. Before I even get into, this is just my resume, and I can't tell you if this is right or wrong, but before I even get into my experience, I put a little 3-4 sentence paragraph that's kind of my own introduction to myself. And I talk about in my introduction about how I love board sports, how I'm a 30-year-old dude who's sick of the fact that he's getting older every year and that he's moving out of this demographic, which I love to design for, which is the 20 to 25-year-old. And I get further and further away from that. And that's in my bio. I got the fact that I've tried pretty much any board sport. I love board sports, and that's right there in my bio. I feel like I put that in there just so somebody gets an idea of who I am. Because again, as they start to go through my experience, I know they don't read everything. I know they don't really care about the bullet points. How else can I stand out is what I try and do myself. To your portfolio question as well, I don't know if there's something you can do to stand out. In fact, I think, didn't we talk about this a while ago? This is probably months ago. We talked about quality and quantity. And the idea of like, okay, do I pursue quality portfolio or quantity in my portfolio? And the conversation that we had was, I do believe you should have quality and not quantity, but I don't believe your first 3 projects in school represent your best quality. So if you got your first 3 projects that you did in school on your portfolio, and in the months that progress, you're not updating that. I'm not saying add your next 1 or 2 to your portfolio. I'm saying replace the ones that aren't that great anymore, or the ones that you've learned some new skills and you've demonstrated something new. I like quality over quantity. I just know that your first 3 that you did in school will fall far behind as you continue to practice. There we go. I used the buzzword practice. I'm talking practice now.
Wait, we're talking about practice.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Sean?
Yeah.
Cool.
Anybody else? We'll just kind of pass the mic around. Shelly?
I also want to say this. If you disagree with me, I take zero offense.
Any hecklers?
If you want to challenge me, let's talk about that as well. Or if you go like, yeah, Dylan, that's nice in practice, but here's the scenario I'm in. Let's hear it, and then we can talk about it and get a little bit deeper in it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shelly Gardner. I'm a sophomore right now at UVU, so I have a couple years to go. One of my questions following that quality versus quantity, I am not in a job in the field, so I got some suggestions from my professors recently during the spring to just do case studies on redoing things. Is that something that you look at as counting because you want to do process more than content? Or
Sorry.
filling with my questions?
No, I just choked in my water because I'm not very talented.
So that's kind of my thing, as like doing case studies instead
Yep.
of just doing schoolwork. Is
Yep.
that something that stands out to you?
Yes. I do think turning your portfolio work into a case study is a best practice. And now don't quote me on that, because if you go and look at my website, I haven't done that to a single project. I've been so strapped for time. My website's very far behind. I guarantee that your websites are a lot better than mine right now. Yes, case studies are important, but what is the reason you're doing the case study is my is my next question. Are you doing a case study? Because if you jump on Behance, you'll see this all the time. Just type in Facebook redesign and you're going to find 1,000 projects. And I always wonder, like, what was the rhyme and reason for that? As a UX designer, we're not designing just for the sake of design. There's a lot more at play, specifically when it comes to a redesign. Designers tend to go redesign crazy. It's always a fun thing to do. So why are we redesigning? And understanding that there's going to be a lot of, in the real world, in practice, if I proposed to Domo that we redesign their app, they'd laugh me out of the room. We can't redesign the app. We've got too much moving forward, that taking the time to go back, the time, the money, the loss that we'd have of what we could be doing prevents us from doing a redesign. So I ask, okay, why are we doing a redesign case study? But if you can propose in that case study that I believe that if we redesigned this Facebook app in this way, we would increase retention, or we'd be able to increase time in app, and then your case study goes and points out how you're going to do that in this redesign, I think you knocked it out of the park. If you can tie that case study back to something that maybe speaks a little bit more the problem I'm trying to solve or the business value I'm going to add, I really think you're starting to speak a business language if they're going to start to look at your portfolio and read about your case studies. But redesign just for the sake of redesign, please don't do. Ripping apart, let's say, because I see a couple designers do this too, you want to do a case study on Instagram and talk about how they're following poor UX practices. And then you don't propose how to fix it, that does zero for me as well. Everyone can be a critique. Anyone can be a critique. It's easy to point a finger and say, well, that's not right. That was bad. It's a lot harder to say, yeah, but they had to do that because of this reason, or trying to find the value in which they, continue down that path. If you're going to do kind of a tear down case study, I think you've got to propose a solution as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a kind of follow-up question to that. Thanks. So with that, the type of work that we put into our portfolios, so you're saying it doesn't really matter so much that if it's schoolwork or real work, as long as you're actually solving a real problem.
Yeah, I don't know if it's schoolwork or real work.
Yeah.
Actually, something to follow up on that.
And I'll also say, depending on the quality of it, I also don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're demonstrating these things that we're talking about right now, I don't care if it's schoolwork or freelance work or a fictitious made up work that you just came up with.
It makes me think that there's different types of case studies, the way you put it, because I guess, yeah, like in school we're learning like end to end, like you have to show wireframes and you have to show sketches, but just based off my experience working at a company, like you said, like redesigns aren't always in scope, and so maybe the redesign is just you showing screens of the current app and then just changes that you've made based off user testing and stuff, and that'd be short to case study, but it's accurate and it's like surgical.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just hits a point, like, okay, right here, like I know how to work with something that's been established, already has users, and then we are just doing some tweaks because
Yep.
it's a long game.
And it's going to be difficult to sell that, you were able to user test it. But maybe that's not the emphasis of that case study that you're doing, right? If you're going to propose that Instagram should change this button to this because it's going to increase, let's just say, time in app, well, it's going to be a difficult one to user test. But maybe there's some other studies already out there that could help propose why you believe that, right? I don't know if one of the most famous user experience that was documented, done by Spotify, was when they changed from the hamburger button to a tab bar. Everyone know what the hamburger button is, right? The little three bar. Okay, everyone's on it. Good. Everyone knows what that is. Don't do that. But when they went from their hamburger button to a tab bar, they documented the user testing that they did. They documented the data that went along with it, and it's a great case study to read. I don't think you need to have all that data in order to say this is why I made that decision. But if you can reference, hey, I think that this app needs to move from a hamburger to a tab bar because of some of this data that Spotify found, and these users are similar types of users, or they've got similar types of goals, yada, yada. I think you can make that jump.
Okay. Oh, just one more thing.
Oh, go.
Well, so, but if you're able to just back up any claims you make instead of like writing like a potentially fictitious narrative, like have pictures of like your user testing and stuff, and then like backing up like your reasoning with actual, like maybe visualizing the data as well and stuff like that. So that would like count as like a potential case study.
Sure.
Because I was reflecting on that today, just for like my portfolio is maybe I just make a portfolio and I just put 3 projects and then I just put line like arrows with like labels like this one's a visual case study, this one is an architecting case study. Like just be like totally blatant, like, okay, this is what you're going to get from this case study.
Sure.
Would you say that's maybe like a different strategy to go if we want to differentiate our portfolios instead of just doing like a full process? It's like, okay, well, this one we're working on maybe re-architecting the flow or something, or
you're not going to like this answer.
okay, go ahead.
And this is just me. I really don't care. I mean, I don't know. I cool, you're doing work, you understand process. But again, I'm almost not as interested in what you did, but in reading why you did what you did. I think there's 100 right answers for how to construct a case study or portfolio. I'm not convinced that there's one right way of doing it. I'm more interested in going, I want to hear him talk through it. Whatever he's doing, I just want to hear him talk through it.
Okay, that was a good answer. Cassie?
Hi, I'm Cassidy. I'm a sophomore in this program, but I was just jotting down some notes while you were talking about your startup experience, and I'm currently working for a startup and wearing multiple hats.
That's fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's really fun.
It is fun. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but it is fun.
No, I've been actually I've been kind of struggling with it, but I wondered as do you think it's valuable to even have that experience where you see someone that's worked in the startup that's worn multiple hats, that had multiple roles, to learn how to work in a team environment?
What type of roles are you fulfilling?
Email design,
Okay.
web design,
Okay.
Instagram ads,
Mhm.
I'm just all over the place. And I've been doing some marketing,
Okay.
some photo shoot stuff.
Yeah.
Just a lot of hats.
No, I think that's awesome. The reason I asked that because it depends on what kind of company you want to see yourself falling in after this, right? Me personally, I love the startup world. I like the variety that wearing multiple hats offers. But Domo, for example, doesn't need me to wear multiple hats. They don't need me to do marketing design. They don't need me to do email design. They don't need me to do photo shoots or anything like that. They need me to do one thing. So if you're trying to land at a place like Domo, I don't think it necessarily helps for landing the job. I do think it helps you personally as a designer to be more, well-rounded. But I totally see it as something valuable if the next place you want to go is another startup and you've already been practicing all these different skills. I think that's totally rad.
I guess I'm more focused on how you were talking about soft skills, how I would be able to reiterate that. So hopefully in the future I can just focus on one narrow piece.
Yeah.
If it would be helpful for a larger company like Domo, or
Sure.
to see my experience in a startup wearing multiple hats.
So what is the dream job?
I want to work at bands. That's it.
Okay. Doing what?
I haven't really narrowed it down totally, but I'm interested in product design, and
Okay.
I've worked for 2 startups. This is my second startup.
Good for you.
In baby clothing.
Uh-huh.
Sounds weird, but yeah. So more merchandise type stuff.
Sure. I think if you can, I think this goes back to maybe resume. And if you can quickly share in your resume that you've got experience in these things and relate it back to how that helps with the soft skills, I think that's totally applicable. I worked with a marketing team to help design Instagram ads that were seen by, X thousands of people resulted in this type of margin profit or whatever.
Right. So maybe adding like on my portfolio resume, the amount, like the data, like the click rate per emails has gone up since I started. Or
Yep.
Implemented
Yep.
animation. That
And if,
type of thing.
yep, I think that speaks to the value that you're adding to the business. And I think sometimes designers forget that, business is what pays the bills. So you need to please business. So I do think speaking business is good, but also for your sake, I think it's helpful to speak to what soft skills you're learning. So if you can talk about how you're collaborating with people from different backgrounds with different skills themselves. I worked with a data analyst and a marketing team to help identify that these targeted ads increased revenue by this amount. I think you're speaking to both your business value and your soft skills.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Vance is rad as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Solo. Oh, sorry. Everybody here knows me as Mitch. So I have a unique opportunity. I actually was at a place yesterday, kind of as a guest, but I was working, like talking them through with some design things that I'm going through and ideas. And they actually invited me back to kind of keep working a little more on some of the stuff I was doing there. I'm going there tomorrow.
Okay.
And I don't know, like, it's a field that doesn't usually have UX designers or that type of product design. If I was to approach them with something like joining them as this type of thing, is there an appropriate or not appropriate way of approaching this kind of a proposal?
Yeah. Again, you're getting my opinion, and I'm probably not the most authoritative source on this, but I can give you kind of my 2 cents. Two things real quick, and excuse me, remind me the name of the previous question. Fans, what was your name?
Cassidy.
Cassidy.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think, again, we talk about needing to solve problems, and at startups, if they don't have traditional UX designers, one thing that I can almost guarantee they don't know is a design process. And you guys are in school learning design process. You're identifying problems, you're validating those things, maybe you're creating personas, you're wireframing, you're doing all this stuff. They don't know this, and we can't blame them for not knowing this, but they're probably not going through the practice of a design process as we learned it. So a difficult spot that you could find yourself in is now you have to be the advocate for a design process as well. There can be a pretty difficult challenge, specifically at a startup where they're going, I don't have time to go through all this testing. I don't have time to create personas. I don't have time for interviews. I need to turn this out now, because if I can pump it out now, there's this perceived time save. Now, I can also tell you in that kind of the same note, when you don't go through that design process, do we really save time? I think you guys all know the answer to that. I've worked on this project that is notoriously famous for not going through a design process, and it's taken 1.5 years for it to launch. And we all just kind of look at it going, yeah, and I can tell you why, because there was no process followed. So you might find yourself in a position where all of a sudden they're going, okay, what value can you bring to the table? And if the value that you're going to say is, well, I'm going to take you through this design process, they're going, oh, well, we haven't done that, and I don't know why we need to do that, right? And so you got to figure out, how can you sell yourself and your skills to a business? And so, again, what are they caring about? What type of business is it?
Well, so they make video games.
Okay.
And they go through all kinds of design processes, but they don't have a focus on user. It's hard to argue to a video game company that they don't have UX design. Like, it's nearly impossible. They
Right.
have a guy with a UX title who is an illustrator, and so
Yep.
like, I think they're one of those genres of companies that they traditionally think of themselves as really understanding certain things that I think they are probably lacking in. I was
Sure.
actually in the field for 10 years as an animator, so I
Uh-huh.
came back, and there's just lots of things that I've learned, and I'm like, oh, I still don't know how to approach them with this idea.
Well, I think you're hitting it. I mean, case in point, their UX designer is an illustrator. So they don't know what UX design is. And which is funny because to your point, creating a video game is creating a user experience. In fact, I feel like video game creators are the best at creating user experiences. In fact, if you're ever interested, go and watch the user experience of the very first Super Mario Brothers. There's a really cool YouTube video about just the first level of Super Mario Brothers and the user experience that went into it, done perfectly. But to your point right now is you got to figure out how to sell your value to a problem that you perceive that they have. So what is that problem that you perceive they have?
I think that they do a lot of feeling towards, they do a lot of testing,
Mhm.
but I think a lot of their initial design is feeling their way towards, oh yeah, this feels like the right way to go. And, you know, they test things to death, but they still release products not entirely knowing for sure, like it's a big, scary thing.
Yep.
And I don't think it should be.
And what value are you going to bring to the process then?
Hopefully filling that gap.
Wh-
Because I would assume these things that we're learning in school, like
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a UX designer. They don't have somebody who's even like, I know that going to university isn't the same as experience, but they don't have even that.
Yep.
They have Google.
Okay.
So I think the value would be more of a I don't know how to word it. This approach to learning the user, knowing them far better at the very beginning than they might not have already realized.
Sure.
They didn't understand before.
Sure. I think you're going to need, again, and how are you going to propose it? I think you need to wordsmith that a little bit so that we can figure out how to say that to them.
I actually don't plan on bringing this to them tomorrow, but I think that because I think they're kind of looking at what I'm doing and
Yep.
going, oh, there might be value in the show us more.
Well, I think the last piece to it, and this is the last thing I wanted to ask you, is so there's their problem. Here's the value that you're going to add, and why is that going to help them? That's the last question you need to figure out how to answer. Because as you go to propose this to them, I think that's exactly the way you lay it out. You know, I've recognized that this right here in this process, there may be some conflict. It may not work as smoothly as you like. I've got a specific background in this, and I feel like I can smooth this process out by doing this. And if we smooth this out, I feel like the value that we can have then as a company is faster turnaround or quicker time to market or, you know, whatever. I think you got to figure out how to go problem, value, and business value.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. I think that seems like the answer to my question.
And I wouldn't be afraid. Afraid of throwing that out there. I mean, if you feel confident in their
I'm
problem,
kind of feeling my way through it because
Sure.
I'm not exactly sure what they didn't say. They just invited me back. So
sure, feel it out. But again, if you can really identify the problem that they're having, the value that you can then bridge, and how that's going to help them get greater value, I think you've nailed it. I think it's a great opportunity to try and assert yourself into a position that isn't currently there. Cool.
yeah, I think my original idea of asking the question was, is that right there kind of a, no, don't do that. You're just going to,
No, I totally love it.
okay, cool.
No, I totally love it. Again, if you can speak, let's say I'm the business owner, and if you can speak to my needs and my problem and the value that you can fix, now I can start to justify why I need you. I think it's great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Lo. Question. So I come from a traditional graphic designing background, and knowing a lot of designers, and forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but I feel like a lot of people in the creative space, compared to, I guess, other departments in the company, are a lot more, I guess, introverted and humble, opposed to being very outgoing and very boastful about themselves. And I feel that kind of hurts us at times when it comes to networking, which you said is really, really important. So for me, myself, knowing like my personality, networking can be a little bit intimidating at times. And I can find myself maybe avoiding certain events or certain meetups just for fear of putting myself out there. Especially whenever it comes to maybe times that you need a job and you know that you need to network, which I guess the second part of my question would be opposed to the first, which would be like, what tips do you have for people who I guess aren't used to networking? Then also, how can you network at a time when you need it without being, I guess, coming off as artificial, needing something, but in a way that you can pose yourself as providing value to a mentor or to someone else that you're trying to network with?
That's a really good question, though. You know, this might surprise you, but I am someone who actually struggles with like social anxiety, like through the roof. I hate going to parties. I hate superficial conversations. I don't want to find myself in a conversation where I'm talking with a neighbor who I only talk with once a year, and we're talking about like our lawn or something like that. Like I don't want to be in that scenario. I try to avoid those things at all costs. It's one of the reasons why when I do like these speaking things, I try to show up early to start meeting the people who are there early, because if I can say hi and start talking to people who are already there, then I don't feel like I'm in front of a huge group. I feel like we're just in front of a group of friends. Right now, that's not really an easy thing to do when, let's say, you're at a career fair, right? And you don't really want to walk up to any booth and start asserting yourself. What do? Buck up. I mean, ultimately, you've got to ask the questions. Nothing's going to happen if you just sit back passively. And yes, it sucks in the moment, but I think the more you practice, the easier it gets. In fact, I'm recognizing now that I'm not as sweaty as I was last time I spoke. So I think it gets easier the more you do it. But then to the next point of like, okay, let's say I've done it now and I've made a couple connections. How do I maintain these connections? I think there is benefit in creating a ton of connections, because naturally you aren't going to resonate with everyone. And the mentors that I have are mentors who are people that I really truthfully get along with. They've now this mentorship has become more of a friendship thing. And I think that's crucial because, again, I've had a lot of people reach out over the last couple years wanting mentorship. It's very transparent when they're in it just for themselves. And so it's a natural thing. It's funny because I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine just a week or so ago, but I said it's kind of like dating.
I'm like, Cam, it's time. It's time.
Did we talk about this or what?
It's just like a thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, I explained to everybody about like networking that's like dating, and that marriage is getting the job. But
And I've had a couple guys who, after introducing themselves, then they just went gung-ho and reaching out to me. And I mean gung-ho, like they were texting me at like 10:30 at night. Don't do that. And they would like blow up my LinkedIn messages, and they were sending me emails, and they were saying like, hey, I've got this new portfolio piece. Do you mind giving it a critique? And they just went like all in and trying to get my attention. I don't mind that. That's a lie. I do mind it. It's not natural, right? I mean, Lo, you're married, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe.
It's a good day today.
So go back to when you weren't married and you were dating. If you just started blowing up this girl's DMs, how's that going to work out for you? Right? Right? So you got to kind of approach it the same way. It's got to be supernatural. The I don't know, these budding designers who I feel like I've got a good connection with right now, we've kind of evolved in a friendship. It happened so naturally where I posted something on LinkedIn and then they left a comment. And they weren't blowing up my emails, they weren't blowing up my messages, and a couple weeks later they posted something and now I commented on it. And a couple weeks later, this happened again. And the next thing you know, he said, hey, you posted something and I really appreciate it because I learned this. And it just like, it happened gradually. It happened naturally. You're not going to want to do that if you don't feel connected to somebody. So again, I think you've got to play the numbers game. You've got to cast your net and talk to as many people as you can, but then whittle that down to actual connections that you feel you can maintain, that you can feel natural about I guess, nurturing this relationship.
Awesome, that's perfect.
Cool. Thanks, Lo.
I just want to add to that real quick. Yeah, you can keep it. All right. I'll just go. No, I like this conversation because I'm also super introverted. Sometimes I don't come off that way, but
He hides behind the beard.
I can hide the beard and the hair.
I only say it because that was my beard 3 months ago. Now I'm envious.
So
Did your
something
wife
that
tell you that?
like I switched gears in, and we've kind of discussed this is, I would say a while ago, I was kind of acting like the guy, you know, that, hey, what's up? Let's go out. Give me your number. Let's get married. Like that kind of dude. And I came off so desperate, and a lot of it was desperation because I was frustrated because I wasn't finding anything. But something that I did a while back that has really changed the game for me, and I've actually made more connections, valuable connections too, is I'm not networking to get the job. I'm networking to meet people. And if I meet that person, whether they get me a job or not doesn't matter, because maybe 5 years down the road, because I formed this relationship, he'll be like, hey, Cam, like, so I just changed my mindset and just be like, and not just going for, I don't know, maybe I'm not disagreeing with you as far as like the casting the net.
No, disagree.
Do it.
I'm actually like, when I friend people on LinkedIn, like my approach is like, if I connected with you on LinkedIn, it's because like I actually want to get to know you, or I've been following you, or I think it's really ingenuine to just connect with people because they might work at a company that you want to work at. But I don't know. That's just, I don't know. But like I said, I've had success. I've had success with just trying to form a relationship rather than get the job.
Where's the disagreement?
Oh, just casting the net.
Numbers
the
game?
numbers game.
Oh, sure.
But I think the part of the numbers game is like when you're dating, like you're not just dating
You're just
random
talking to the
people,
microphone.
right? You're not just like, I'm going to date everyone and their dog.
I think when I
Yeah.
talk to the numbers game, I'm talking more of like the career fair setting.
Oh, okay.
When you're having to go booth to booth and you're having to talk to as many people as you can, I totally think that's a scenario where you got to play the numbers game.
Okay.
But to your point, like, don't send out, connect. That's not authentic.
The best mentor relationship I have, one of the better ones was, it did happen naturally, and I actually didn't intend to meet him on LinkedIn. It was, I asked asked a question about like design systems on this one like thought leader's post, and this other guy who at the time was working at IBM iX, he actually answered it, and then he looked at my profile, and then he saw like the articles I was writing and stuff. One thing I'd recommend, and what we talked about at the beginning, is like double down on a piece of content, like a medium of content that you're good at. So it could be podcasting. I have a strength towards writing, so I like to write a lot of articles. And he read the articles and he's like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. And he actually like reached out to me with this one, because he saw that I was doing events and stuff at the school, and he offered an idea to go talk to this one guy to invite to the school. And then just from that, we just started chatting and stuff. And then he eventually moved back to Utah from San Francisco, and he's just been awesome. It's been a really cool relationship. But it wasn't because I was trying to work at IBM. Actually, I think it's the whole point of networking is to increase your chances of serendipity. It's to meet that person that knows a person. It's not to like directly get to someone. It's to meet their friend inadvertently.
Mutual friends.
Yeah, it's the weak links thing, right? So, and that wouldn't have happened. And then also he showed me this grad school that looks really awesome. I never would have found out about it if I wasn't just trying to like talk and meet with people on LinkedIn. Like that was just something that happened, and it was super cool. That's because I put myself out there.
If I can just share one more thing about LinkedIn, I honestly, I do want to connect with all of you guys. I want you to reach out. I want you to connect. One thing I want you also to get in the habit of is when you reach out to connect with somebody, don't just hit the connect button. Try and send a message to go along with that connection. I am much more likely to connect with you if I see that they sent a message along with it. In fact, there's a handful of connections that I have right now on LinkedIn that I'm purposely ignoring right now, just because I'm holding it against them because I don't know them. And why would I connect on LinkedIn? I can't nurture a relationship with somebody I don't know. But if they send something along with that message of, hey, we met at the UX club at UVU, you're a really terrible speaker, then I've got something to relate to, and I can respond to it and I can connect. And now we've got some sort of conversation point. It's much more authentic.
Right. Brian, senior here. So in your intro, you talked a lot about traditional school, going back to school, working with UVUI, and then your focus on soft skills, how those, in my opinion of what you've been saying, that seems to be more important than hard skills.
Yeah, I'm glad you're picking up on that. Yep.
Do you feel like there is a specific set of soft skills that you learn at school that you wouldn't learn at work? Because you can learn hard skills both places.
That's a tough question. I don't really know how to answer that one. Is there a better place to learn these soft skills? I really think that you can learn soft skills without even going through a UX program, right? Yeah. Your ability to articulate your thoughts or to communicate is something that doesn't need to be taught in a design program. It could be taught in any program. One of the skills that I do think you're more likely to develop while you're in school is this idea of teachability. How willing are you to submit yourself to an idea that you just don't know, to put your pride aside, to put your ego aside, and let somebody else teach you something. I think it's a lot easier to learn that one at school than it is when you're sitting at home in your office by yourself.
Sure. Cool.
Is there anything specifically that you're thinking about?
No, I just wanted to see if you had a connection between the two.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, because even if you ask me, Dylan, where are you learning soft skills? With my kids. Yeah. Like, as funny as that sounds, but with my kids, with my wife, with with the little friends that I have, like that's where I'm practicing it. With my coworkers, yes, that happens, but how to articulate what's on my mind, how to articulate my thoughts to a 5-year-old, yeah, it's a challenge, right? So there's a lot of ways to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I just couldn't think of a connection. I wanted to see if you had anything for that.
Well, I'm gonna have a hot take opinion. I just don't think that, and this is weird because our professor's here. I don't think school's going to prepare you for the real world. I don't put 100% confidence in my studies here, and that's why I work a lot outside of the curriculum to learn. And I just read as many books as possible about soft skills. Just looking for anything. I don't know.
Is there so this is actually now it's my turn to be selfish and ask a question. So what I mentioned that I was working on a little curriculum, and the curriculum that I'm working on is how to learn soft skills in a design world. Let me ask you guys a question. What soft skills don't you feel confident in as it relates to design? If you were to land yourself in a position tomorrow at a company, what soft skills are you going, I might struggle with that? Yeah.
I think, and I've kind of experienced this a little bit, being, I guess, newer into the industry and having, we'll say, like an older developer or an older designer, kind of balancing, not trying to tell them what to do, or like, if you have an opinion, like, you don't want to come off as like, oh, this, like, I guess, bratty youngster.
Yep.
Just like being able to voice your opinion, but not coming off as like I said, I guess just like that bratty, like. Yep. New.
I know. I totally know what you're saying. Yep. It's easy to look at the new guy being like, "What do you know?
So
You've been here for how long?"
You have to wait 3 months before you can actually input your
yeah, exactly.
3 months.
No, that's a challenging one. Yep. Other thoughts?
I think going along with that is defending your designs against senior developers or senior designers, or for us professors.
how
not
to defend.
immediately
Yeah.
folding and being
Yep.
like, oh no, I'm sorry, I did that. I'll change it immediately.
Yep.
But sticking to your guns essentially.
Love it. Love it. That too is a tough one, right? Because there's, I mean, how do you collaborate if you just submit to somebody else's idea,
It's not collaborating.
right?
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to have some sort of back and forth. There's got to be dialogue. There's right ways to do that. There's wrong ways to do that.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's another hand. Was it Cassidy?
Yeah, Cassidy. That was kind of along with mine, just communicating with like a boss or defending your decision and
Yep.
being confident in what you pretty much answered.
Yep. Cool.
I think everyone could probably relate to this. When I actually asked your question and you asked it back, I clammed up because I was picturing myself speaking to them and I was like, oh no. I worked for a mobile company. I made like crappy games and now I'm talking to somebody, AAA titles. Yeah, I'm like that just trying to justify something like that to somebody who might see me as an upstart. It's a little intimidating.
You know, one of those skills that I think comes along with that is, let's say you are in a meeting with an executive who doesn't know a thing about UX, but has an idea of how to run a business. I mean, they don't become CEO overnight for no good reason. They're going to have ideas, they're going to have thoughts, and it is on you to validate those ideas and thoughts and to find these little nuggets of truth that are right. They are fact, something that you can build upon. And even if you disagree, you've got solid ground of understanding. I guarantee you, if you don't validate a thought that someone outside of the design world has, and you're this UX designer trying to pull all these different thoughts together, somebody in the room raises their hand and go, oh, I really feel that we need to be doing this, this, and this. And you're like, no, we don't. Next. We obviously know that is one end of the spectrum that you're going, well, that's not going to help. But you can do that passively, right? Somebody could say something and you be, passively, these micro expressions where you go, yeah, mm-hmm, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, good, right? There's a lot of things that you could do that are going to come off as like, you did not validate anything I just said, or you did not hear anything I just said. So learn that those cues, that's important. That's another hand. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say one thing that I feel like is kind of with, I guess, the whole term of UX being relatively new, is just the education of it.
Yep.
The need for it, what it is. Because I've had experiences, I think Cam can vouch for me, where, like, I think a lot of times people, like, they kind of understand what it is, but they don't. There hasn't been a name for it for a while,
Yep.
and I guess now there is. But I think a lot of times what people face is, and I guess for me, is just teaching what UX is, the reasons, the whys.
Yep.
It's funny, I actually posted something on LinkedIn the other day where I was like kind of currently looking for jobs and stuff like that. And there was a job post for a graphic designer, and it said like, can do logos, can do this, has some UX, UI, like, just kind of like, has some UX, UI, like, experience, and I'm like,
And development.
clearly you don't understand.
Yeah.
And as a code
Like,
Yeah.
and it's like
yeah, it's like,
Yep.
and I know a lot of graphic designers that have, like, I guess, kind of turned into, and a lot of people think that graphic designers are the people that just, like, do websites, like, they just think, oh, it's all kind of under the same roof.
Yep.
But I think one of the bigger things is the education behind it, and educating the world, essentially.
Well, and I think part of the reason that they feel that, well, graphic design is UI design and is UX design is because 10 years ago it was, right? I've got an older brother who's been a graphic designer for 25 some years. I guarantee you this guy knows the UX process forwards and backwards. That is his natural design process. He still has the title of graphic designer, and unfortunately, I think it kind of puts him out of jobs at this point because UX has become such a popular term that now people are using UX in their job postings for things that aren't really UX. And if you rewind, 5, 6, 7 years ago, all those job positions that were web design or app design or whatever, those job positions were, we need a graphic designer. And then UI kind of became a term that was catching up a little bit more. But the UI work was still a little bit of graphic design work, a little bit of UI work, a little bit of UX work. and then UX became a term. And then we started to create kind of a difference between them. Some people I still think struggle with the difference between what they are. I'm talking business, or how to draw the line in the sand between we need a UX designer and we need somebody who can do marketing ads, and we need somebody who can do some social media stuff. That's a UX designer, right? I think they struggle with the idea of like, no, there's clear lines in the sand. What do you really need? But I wouldn't let the job position or the title throw you off for what it actually could be. I just interviewed a candidate who's a candidate from, I think he was at Vivint. I was looking at his resume, and he had graphic designer for one of his last positions because that was the title they had given him. And as I started to press him on it, he was like, well, I was designing their websites and I was doing a couple of those things. I was like, okay, so when you were designing a website, what kind of process did you go through? He's like, well, we would do a lot of A/B testing and we would try to figure out the best. And I was like, okay, so you were a UX designer. And he's like, yeah. I go, well, then let's just change this graphic design title to a UX title, because the recruiter who looks at your resume is going to put you out of the question because you had the title of graphic designer, not UX designer. On the flip note, let me just share another quick story. So I came from the startup world, and the big fancy title that they gave me at these startups was creative director. When you're the creative director at a 10-person company, it means absolutely nothing. But I tell you what it does do, it ruins my chances of getting a job at any other company, because when Domo is out hiring, they're not looking for a creative director. So I went back, and everywhere that I was a creative director at the adoption.com. I was creative director at this Plus 11 startup that I was at. I went back and I changed those titles to UX design lead. And dude, you know how LinkedIn gives you these different stats? The viewership of my profile just shot through the roof because I changed the title. Again, I'm of the equation that titles mean absolutely nothing. How one person values a title to another person, it means absolutely nothing. If you got a title at a startup as creative director, you may be an associate designer at one company, you may be a senior designer at another company. So again, what value can you bring? What soft skills, what hard skills can you bring to the table? Not letting the title throw you off, but obviously when you're going into these interviews, knowing what is the responsibility that you actually are intending for me to fulfill, and let's see if my skill sets match the responsibilities you think I need to have. Was there any other concerns that you guys had about those soft skills? I think we need to wrap up here. Is that right?
Yep. Does anyone have a last question or a short question?
Please.
I just have a comment. My name's Ty, and I'm a junior designer. I just landed my first job this week. So
Congratulations.
I want to say thank you to you and other people like you in the industry who fight for internship positions and junior positions, because I think we're all frustrated.
Yep.
With the current state of things. So
Yep.
we're kind of depending on enlightened designers and hiring positions to help us out. So.
And let me also throw this idea out there. If you're in one of the scenarios that Ty was in before he landed his job, and you're going like, I need to find my foot in the door, go after a recruiting manager saying, I'm willing to intern. Because they might not have it, but I guarantee you interns are cheaper than full-time employees who have to give benefits and all that kind of stuff. So maybe someone's going like, yeah, we do need some help. No, we don't have an internship program, but maybe we should start one. Throw yourself out there as a candidate for an internship. If you can get 3 to 5 months of experience at a company doing an internship, it does look better on your resume.
Cool. Well, Dylan, thanks so much for coming and being extra generous with your time. I think we're over an hour. Is there anything you want to plug? I think we talked about an opportunity that you're working on, you need an assistant or something like that.
Yeah, I'm. You guys know I'm doing the podcast. We talked a little bit about that. I was in need of someone who could do some post-edit stuff. If that's something of interest of yours, go ahead and reach out. No, there's nothing really I need to plug. I don't really care to plug. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. I would like to get to know you guys. Again, and if we can create some sort of honest, authentic relationship as someone who does hiring, I'm much more likely to look for something for you or help connect you with somebody if I feel we've got something authentic. Even if it's not with Domo and it's with somebody else, I'm not going to do it with a surface level relationship. But if we can, if we can form a friendship, you've got a lot better of an opportunity. And whether it's with me or somebody else in the industry, get after it.
Thanks for coming.
Cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate you coming out. Don't clap. Was not clap worthy.